Carallel. Matt Perrin, Director of Caregiver Engagement here at Carallel, back with you. And I have a friend and colleague alongside today, probably a familiar face at this point, but she's a care advocate at Carallel. She's a certified dementia practitioner and a million other things. Sheila Schultz is here. Hey, Sheila.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good, good, good. Thanks for joining, as always. We're gonna have to make some sort of official announcement to the public soon to just anoint you permanent co-host.
Great.
Okay, so we're here to talk about self-care ideas today in the May edition. Couple of bits of housekeeping real quick. If you're joining one of these sessions for the first time, welcome. We're Carallel, we're a caregiver support company. We wake up every day to support, guide, and assist family caregivers. Full stop. That's our business. That's what we do. And we do it in two ways. First and foremost with personalized support over the phone, email, or chat by our team of care advocates, of which Sheila is a part. And then we complement that one-on-one support with our digital experience, which is essentially a one-stop shop, online, 24/7 available to you, full of helpful articles, resources, videos like this, tools to help you get stuff done. It's a one-stop shop for anything you might need caregiving wise. So we provide our service through health plans and employers across the country. So if you're not sure whether or not you have access to the full service, ask your health plan or your employer. So that's number one. Number two, these are conversations. You're not going to see any slides. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to be a part of it. If you have questions, comments, things that have worked, ideas, anything at all, use the chat and QA buttons, or I should say, or QA button down at the bottom of your console. And lastly, from a housekeeping standpoint, today we have a handout. So if you click the resources button in the bottom of your console, you'll see an idea sheet is what we're calling it, but it's a little bit of a word association on a page. It's just a bunch of ideas of activities that can help you relieve stress. So feel free to download that. If you have trouble doing so, just email me. You can reply to your confirmation email. I should get those emails, and we'll get the document over to you. So all right, that's housekeeping. Now, Sheila, let's get into it. So we split, we try and be practical, of course, in these conversations. Want to split this conversation in really two parts. The first part's a small one, but really, really important. And it may seem elementary to someone, but I want to ask you the question, what is self-care, right? And I just, let's level set, because for me, at a certain point in my caregiving experience, it became like a four-letter word. I was always told, you got to take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of yourself, etc. And it just got, in my head, I'm thinking, like, when do I have time for that? It got, I wish I had a better word for it, but annoying to hear constantly. I knew I needed to be doing it, got tired of hearing it. So what is self-care? Let's level set there.
Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I think we need to get super simple, because I think people have these grandiose ideas of what this is. And when you think of it in those big terms, of course, you're not going to have time. So when I came up with a really simple definition, I think of self-care as any action or intention that supports areas of your own well-being. Simple as that.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And I love that you use the word intention. So it doesn't have to actually be an action.
Right.
And when you say well-being, I just want to unpack. So it's our it's our physical health as caregivers. That's one piece, but also our mental health or emotional health, right? Is that where sort of the intentions can come in?
Oh, for sure. I mean, and even more than that, it's social well-being, it's spiritual well-being. There are so many aspects of that make up well-being, occupational, financial. But in the general sense, we tend to think of, physical, mental, emotional, and actually social for this group too, because they're all really important as a caregiver.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And so I really appreciate the way you put that. I gave it some thought as well. and I came up with just, my head works in bullet points, but any action, I wasn't good enough to get intention in there, but I love that. But any action that helps us manage stress or tend to our own healthcare, right, is how I was
Yeah,
thinking about it. Because it's
yeah,
just so easily put on the back burner, I guess. All right. That gives us a good start to, and a good framing to sort of dive a little bit deeper now into some ideas of how we can actually do it.
okay,
And and I use ideas, I do use that word intentionally, because some of them are, I guess, not to go back to your mention of intentions, but some of them are thoughts, right? They're sort of mental models. They're thoughts that can sort of get us in the right frame of mind as a caregiver, to be thinking about actually caring for ourselves. Does that make sense?
totally. And
Okay.
you know what? The thing that I thought was really interesting, and I think so many of us do this as caregivers, when that frustration that comes up
Mm-hmm.
leads to a thought. And so when you're thinking of your intention, like it is a practice, but when you're going, oh, I wish they wouldn't ask me that, realize that that thought is using energy. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
this resistance that's sapping your energy. And if you can find ways to, express that, you can say of course, you don't want to bottle that up. You could say you're frustrated, you could write, you could journal, you could do things to get it out. But then it gives you the idea, it makes you realize how often those thoughts are coming up and how tense just the thought is making you feel.
Right.
So,
I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's start with a couple of ideas, kind of in a similar vein, because these are really about uh, thoughts, that like framing in our own mind. And the first is something that took me so long to realize or to learn or to believe, I guess is probably the best word. But this whole idea that when I was caring for my mom, that my health and well-being was just as important as hers. Like, just that's it. It's not for any other reason. It's because we're both people. Yes, the construct is she was living with Alzheimer's disease. I was caring for her. That's a lot of work and all consuming and all of that. Yes. And she was the priority. But in that construct, what was hard, the hard thing for me to see was my healthcare, my well-being in that period of time was just every bit as important as hers was. Right. So
it's hard.
that's the first thought. And it just I wish I could, it's hard to describe, but like it that I put that one first on the list because once I believed that, a lot of the other things that we're going to talk about here became easier
Mhm.
to digest, to understand, to embrace, to really feel and live, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you speak with caregivers every day? Like, why
Yeah,
is it
I
so
think,
hard, I guess?
well,
And do you agree?
I, first of all, yes, I agree. And it happens to all of us. It happens to people I talk with every single day. And I really feel like we get this momentum going,
Mhm.
caregiving, and we've got lists of things. And the trick is to break that momentum. And
Mm,
that's kind of what you're talking about is
mm,
you have to have a break in that momentum to even start realizing that, wait, what am I doing? Like
mhm.
I just need a little bit of space to understand that I don't have to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. So whatever you can do to make little tiny breaks in that momentum of pushing forward is really going to make a big difference and give you the opportunity to see what you're capable of doing for yourself.
Right, right. And it's interesting you use that phrase, break the momentum, um, because the I didn't just like have this light bulb moment all on my own at one point. Like I was, um, I was doing all the things. I was in therapy. We had a family counselor. Like we were doing all sorts of stuff. And this had been suggested to me, like, your health and well-being is just as important as mom's, et cetera, et cetera. But the context was about setting boundaries, about helping me sort of build the skills I needed and frankly, the courage in some cases I needed to set boundaries and sort of abide by them. So
Yeah,
it's just interesting to hear you say, oh, stopping the momentum, and use that phrase, because that's exactly what boundaries are, right? And at
yeah,
some level, like
yeah,
it's they are a wall between you and your, the rest of you and the caregiving you, I guess.
yeah, that's right.
And to your point, they don't have to be these big giant walls, right? They can be a boundary that separates you for 5 minutes, or things like that. But um,
Definitely.
yeah. So, and the second is an idea also at a certain point came, it's related to what we're talking about here, but it's important because for me, it became kind of a little bit of a mantra. I was a mantra user when I was caregiving, and I had a
Yeah,
bunch of them. One of them was, again, not coined by me, certainly, but, and you've probably heard it, but self-care isn't selfish. And this
no,
interesting thing happened with me in that phrase, which was, I'd see it on cards, I'd see it on like social media, I'd see it everywhere. It's one thing to see the words, but it's another to actually like live it, like believe it in your moment, like not feel guilty if you're going out for 3 hours and leaving your person
right.
with someone else, or alone if they're able to do that. Like that's really, really difficult to do. Um,
Yeah,
but like that sort of, I'll just go with mantra, that mantra of self-care not being selfish was a, even as silly as it may sound, like was an important sort of stepping stone for me in being able to put myself in a position to actually give myself the care and attention that I needed.
yeah. I think mantras are wonderful, and I think, but like you said, it can't just be the word. You really have to feel it and believe it. And I know you've mentioned this before too, Matt, but I'm a real believer in sticky notes. And
Mm,
I think a big part of our momentum going forward is we keep thinking about the next thing, the next thing.
mm,
So I've done a lot of work with families on stress management, and I highly recommend a sticky note reminder on your refrigerator, on your bathroom mirror, on your computer, whatever, that says, slow down,
mm,
or stay here in the moment, or one thing at a time, or whatever it is, to like, oh yeah, I don't have to be thinking about tomorrow yet because I can't manage tomorrow from today. I just have to take care of right now. So I
hmm.
love mantras, love them.
Yeah, I agree. I had a number of them, and yeah, at certain points, have you ever seen the movie Beautiful Mind with Russell
Yeah,
Crowe,
yeah,
where he's got the stuff all over the wall, or look like, or like it, a crime movie where you got the detective like
right.
taking the case home, and they have sticky notes and everything on. At certain points, the wall in my office kind of looked like those. And we're talking about these are kind of like pie in the sky sort of, they're like philosophical, like kind of high level
Mm,
things. But the reason I wanted to have these on sort of the run of show today, um, is because they are important in they're stepping stones, I guess. I think of them that way, to actually clear the way for someone to go do that thing that's gonna um uh you know be for just for them, right? Or have that intention that's just for them. So that's the reason, even as elementary as maybe these initial two ideas may sound to some, that's why they're included.
yep.
So and one more important one, and you kind of alluded to it when we were just sort of hopping on the call here, but um, what about like what about dosage for self-care? Talk to me about dosage. Like, because like it was always in my head, and you were hitting the nail on the head. It was, you take care of yourself. Yeah, I'd love to go have a weekend away, or a week
Right.
away, or like talk to me about um so like just what works for the time that we're devoting to self-care. Does it have to be a week? Does it have to be a weekend? Talk to me about that.
Micro minutes is really what you have to get in the habit of doing. And just like I was talking about breaking the momentum, if we keep doing the same thing every day, we're gonna have the same thoughts and act the same way. So to me, we have to break away from that. You know,
Mhm.
as simple as it is, grab a different mug than you normally do in the morning. It sounds crazy, but just little simple changes of doing something different, holding something in your left hand instead of your right hand, it does something to your brain. And what that's gonna do is change. It is one of those triggers to break the momentum. So how simple is that, right? Grab your cup with your left hand. You don't think that means anything, but that can lead to, oh my gosh, I'm doing something different, and it makes your brain slow down and shifts things, and it gives you that opportunity to break that momentum. So that's a long way of saying teeny tiny changes that you can put in your life can make a huge difference.
I love it. I love it. And that's not something I would have ever thought of. So I love the general theme of just it just makes it seem achievable, doable, and like for
Yeah,
most caregivers, there's not enough time in the day. But I just love the articulation of just this notion of like pattern breaking, I guess, or momentum
that's
breaking.
exactly it. Pattern breaking.
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
And I never knew there were these benefits that you speak of, but okay, so I'm keeping an eye on the time. We got about 11 more minutes here. Again, just put another call out to the audience. If there are questions, comments, perspectives, anything at all, feel free to share in the chat or the QA. But let's get a little more specific now, Sheila. So I have an admission to make. I am a very picky eater, much better now than I used to be, but very picky eater. Sometimes healthy, a lot of times not, but I'm just a picky eater. And diet, I know, is you're a big proponent of healthy diet as a
Yeah.
uh, uh, active self-care.
Mhm.
Talk to me about that in general, but also like how someone like me, a picky eater, could sort of make incremental gains there. Doesn't have to be life
Right,
changing, I would imagine,
right.
right? Like, because I'm not willing
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, good.
But um, but talk to me about diet and how people
Yeah.
can sort of see that as an act of self-care.
Once again, very small doses. You do not have to change your diet. You don't have to do crazy things, spend crazy money, shop at a new place, buy all kinds of different foods. I like to keep it simple. One of the most important things that I would recommend is drink more water. And if you can't drink one more glass of water, drink a half a glass of water. Do it as soon as you get out of bed. Take a swallow of water. Anything that's more than you did before is going to be great. The second thing is when it comes to food, don't worry about reducing things. Add something. Add one healthy food. Add one healthy bite. That's how easy it is. So in your mind, I'm gonna eat one piece of fruit today, or even half of a piece of fruit, whatever it is. Don't, make it have to be big, because everything you're doing is enhancing your health. Every small step you're adding, every small nutritious piece of food or water is adding to your health.
I I love that, and you're inspiring me here, Sheila.
Good.
And I mean, I say that half in jest, but I'm not kidding. I just have like I've been a picky eater my whole life, and I really globbed on to the comment you made about adding something instead of taking something away. Right?
Yep.
That to me makes changes like this, no matter how subtle, feel uh, sort of achievable.
Yeah, it gets rid of a
And
lot of the guilt, I think, that people have.
yeah, and try it once, do it once, do it again, and you know, just that it feel the way you were describing it felt achievable versus sort of judgy, particularly when it
Yeah,
comes to diet,
good.
So I like that. I like that. Okay, quiet time. Um, something that
Oh
can
gosh,
take
Matt.
many forms. Uh, Another important one, in
Yep.
terms of for me anyway, that was one of the things for me is like I found that what I really craved and needed And I was a sandwich generation caregiver, as they say. So, I was caring for my mom, we were caring for my father-in-law. He was living in the house. We have young school-age children. Um, so it was the crunch. And whether or not you're a sandwich generation, um, from a caregiving sort of context perspective, like I feel like a lot of people have this same feeling, which was I was just starved for like time to myself. Um, so can you talk a little bit about quiet time, the benefits of that? Actually, I should say I didn't necessarily want it. We maybe should have called this time to yourself. Um,
Yeah.
because I didn't necessarily always want it quiet, right? Like I wanted to watch
Mhm.
Sports Center on ESPN a lot of times, but um, talk to me a little bit about like time for yourself or quiet time.
Well, I do think they are separate. I think they're both extremely valuable, but I do feel like we are so inundated by noise right
Mm,
now.
mm,
So I think any time that you can give, once again, you're going to add 30 seconds of quiet time, meaning you're going to turn down the outer noise and you're going to try to turn down the inner dialogue. And that is a practice as well, because you've got lists in your head, you're trying to remember things. But it's just like on this one breath, on
mm,
just a one breath, I'm
mm,
going to take the tasks out of my head. I'm going to turn down the television or turn things down 2 or 3 times a day for one breath is all you need to get started. And it's so nourishing and we really need it.
Okay. I can see that the way you describe it in terms of the quiet and certainly co-sign on the noise in the world.
Yeah.
And what I guess um so what do you say that like so doing it once one day, small
Mhm.
dose, totally get it. You have any tips for like for helping someone sustain that, right? Is it as
It's
simple
just
as just do
practice.
it?
It
Right.
is. It's just as simple as do it. I mean, it's so hard to believe, and you'll start doing it without thinking of it.
Hmm.
That's the thing. If you can just, and in the very beginning, you're going to have to set a timer and say, okay, when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, I'm going to close my eyes again, take one deep breath, and try to just let the day ahead be what it is 30 seconds from now.
Hmm.
And the more you do that, the more you'll find yourself doing that throughout the day. It's just a crazy thing, but it's the way it works.
I got it. Okay. Well, I'm gonna set a personal goal for myself to try that.
All right.
Because I'm buying. Okay, and get outside was another.
Mm.
I'm assuming it's a similar sort of um I mean maybe well, I guess there's a practice element. You just have to force yourself to do it regularly. Um, but small dose is fine, right? Like outside for a minute to stretch or to walk down the driveway or go get the mail
Yeah.
or um and I guess so here's a question. Part of me, and I think I asked this question, if I didn't audibly back when I was caregiving, I certainly did to myself in my head. But how is like a minute of doing anything going to help me, right? Like this is
Well,
the cynical Matt, like
yeah, yeah, I get it.
before I actually started buying into what I was being advised to do back when I was caregiving. But like, how does that work?
So let me give you an analogy.
Uh,
If you eat 100 calories per day of sugar, in a year, you're going to be 10 pounds heavier.
Okay.
So it's over time. If you very tiny things that you're doing, I mean, in this case, it's not a good thing, right?
Right.
You're just saying, oh, I'm just doing a teaspoon. I'm just having a little bit of something. But if you do something like that over time, it adds up. So does exercise. So does any of this stuff. Just really tiny things they could help you for the better or for the worse. I want
Hmm.
to make one comment about the outside thing because it's not just about fresh air, it's about nature. And there's a lot of research out there that talks about being in nature. And if you live in a city, I'm talking about going on your balcony and standing with a plant.
Mm.
It lowers your cortisol levels. it lowers the blood pressure and your heart rate. It reduces stress. There is science all over the place that says that nature is so good for us. And if you could just do that in small amounts, it has a tremendous benefit on your physical and mental health.
I love it. I love it. So last but not least, really important when we have 3 minutes,
Yes.
preventative care. So slightly different than what we've been talking about. I was
Mhm.
very much guilty of falling behind on my preventative care, particularly in the back half of my caregiving years. But can you talk a little bit, talk to me a little bit about preventative care? What does that mean? And this is really something that goes beyond caregiving, right? Just in general. Um, talk 2 minutes about preventative care and tips for some
Well,
people.
we all know what we're supposed to do. And just like everything else, you don't have to do it all at once. If you can just knock off one appointment that you haven't taken care of in a while, go get your teeth cleaned, go get your annual physical, go get your screening done. Whatever it is going to make a big difference. It's getting ahead of things. You're going to feel better. There are things that sometimes creep in the back of our heads because that's the unknown. But if you get it done and you have the result and everything's clean for a year, then you're just, there's this sort of underlying sense of comfort from that. And speaking to your point, if you just wanted to get out on your own, even if it's to a doctor's appointment, you get to go off on your own and you're out of the house and
Yeah.
out of that caregiving
I was
situation.
just gonna say that. I love that. Like that was one of the I at one point I was way overdue for um my annual wellness visits, and I finally went and I had that thought. I was like, man, this is kind of a nice little break. That was
Right?
one. Second, though, which was totally unexpected, was I felt, to your point, I really felt good. Like it made me feel good to go.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
anxious and like, whatever before, but leaving that appointment, I was really, there was a little bit of a release. So I totally feel what
Mhm.
you're saying there. Okay, so we're at time now. I want to real quick just mention next month's session. It's happening on June 20th, and we're talking about durable medical equipment 101. So pretty practically speaking, a pretty important topic. Um, so that'll be good. I'm dropping the registration link into the chat for everybody. And if you want to register for that one, you can just click that link. Sheila, what are some final thoughts for the audience on self-care?
Well, I'm just going to loop back to the very beginning. This is any action or intention that can support your well-being in any number of ways, and do it in small doses. Add things that are good for you instead of worrying so much about taking away things that are
Mm,
bad. And try to break the momentum of being on that hamster wheel of caregiving once in a while, to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and you'd be surprised at the changes you'll start to see.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, the one other thing so I echo all that sentiment. I really love the point you made, Sheila, on a number of the ideas we were talking about adding instead of subtracting. Not that we shouldn't subtract things that are unhealthy for us at certain points,
Sure.
but it just makes it, when I think about making it achievable for a caregiver, that just feels so much more achievable to me, to add
Mhm.
something good or beneficial. So thank you for that. I would say one other thing that we didn't mention is um, step back and take stock of all the great things that you're doing. Like as a
Mm,
caregiver, you're doing an amazing job. You're doing the best you can, and that's what's amazing about it. No one's trained to do what you're doing, um, and you're doing the best you can, full like, period. And that, in my opinion, is amazing. And stepping back to take stock of that and give yourself a little
yeah,
pat on the back is another small, little subtle act of self-care, in my opinion. So I'll
for
end with
sure.
that, but want to thank everybody for being here. We'll see you on June 20th. Oh, and reminder, if you had trouble getting the handout, just respond to your registration email and I'll get that over to you. But thanks everyone. Sheila, thank you. It's a pleasure always.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye now.